Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Welcome to part 2 of planting and pruning these larch trees. In part 1 of this series, I repotted the trees, arranging them in a new pot, root pruning them, and today I'm going to be pruning up the trees. Here is where I left off in part 1 of this series. I bare rooted the trees, root pruned them, arranged them in this new Chinese pot, and they're looking quite nice. So today I'm going to prune up the branches, getting them more compact and getting rid of a lot of those crossing branches that go between the two trees. I got these two trees late last spring from Zin of the YouTube channel Maybe Bonsai. He was downsizing his collection, and the trees didn't grow very well last summer. They leafed out early in his garage, and then he moved them outside and back in, and all that new foliage kind of died off, and the buds kind of stayed dormant on the trees pretty well all summer. It had some growth, but it was very weak. So after a nice cool winter, the trees are ready to grow. They're back on schedule, and they should do quite well this summer. My first step before I begin the pruning is just to look at the trees and look at my pruning strategy. So one thing I noticed down low on the tree here is I have two opposite branches growing in this spot. So I have a feeling one of them will go, and it's probably the one that crosses the trunk line of the tree behind it. As I go up the tree, you'll notice that some of the branches are quite thick up in the apex here. So I have two options. I can either prune the thicker branches away, or I can prune them back, keeping the vigor out of the thicker branches and letting the rest of the tree kind of catch up in thickness. So it brings those branches into proportion. There's a few branches on the little tree that are kind of interfering with the main tree at the moment. Now when I prune this branch off, this branch will have a spot of light. So I've got to look at the relationship between the two trees. Maybe this back branch on the main tree is too close to the smaller tree and needs to be either pruned back or removed. It is very close to being a bar branch in this area here. So those are things I'm looking for. I'm also looking to make the tree more compact. You can see it's getting quite wide and spreading. It doesn't really have a conical shape. Larch trees, if left grown alone in a good location, generally grow into a conical form. If a larch tree is like on a mountaintop or under harsh conditions, you can get a variety of shapes in them. So I've got to decide, what kind of styling I want. And because this tree is a fairly upright, straight trunk tree, I think the traditional conical shape would suit it the best. That's a possible style anyway. So my first step, I'm going to look at the trees, study them, maybe for 10, 15 minutes, and then come up with a pruning strategy and a basic styling for the trees. A good philosophy in bonsai is to think twice and cut once. Sometimes I think 3 or 4 times before I do the cutting. So that never hurts. It's a good idea to think about your trees a lot before you begin the pruning. Another thing to think about when you're pruning trees is that, you always strive for perfection in your trees, but sometimes the tree is what it is, and you've got to live with the faults of the tree. You can't correct everything, at least not at once. You do the best you can. And sometimes you have, a funny looking branch or a branch that's too thick in the wrong place. And you've just got to live with that. That's the way the tree was. And you can't, unless you're growing it from a seed, it's pretty hard to control the growth of it to create like a perfect bonsai image or a perfect miniature tree. So trees in nature aren't perfect. So your bonsai shouldn't be perfect either. So sometimes you've just got to, accept the tree for what it is. When I say sometimes you've got to accept the tree for what it is, it doesn't mean it's an excuse to be lazy or to be indecisive. You try and do as much correction to the tree as you can, how you envision the tree. And you always strive to improve the tree in the future. And those faults, sometimes they can be hidden or minimized. And yeah, it's just something long-term that you keep in the back of your head. Maybe it takes you 2 or 3 years to decide that branch can come off now because it's filled in with other branches in that area. So you're always working towards perfection. You'll never reach perfection, but it's something to always strive for. I'm going to start pruning the trees up now, and I'll start, going up the trunk line. This branch is nice here. This one is a bar branch. You can see it's in a whorl. 2 branches going from one spot on the trunk. It would cause the trunk to kind of swell in this area. And if I made it a deadwood branch, it still crosses the trunk line of the tree behind it. And by the time you removed all the bark off of here, you'd end up with this very thin branch. And so total removal is the solution for this. And I'm going to leave a stub because I can come back later and clean that up. So here I go. So that branch is now removed. On this branch I have a part of it quite thick growing vertically, and I think that needs to be pruned away, so I'll prune that off next. Like that. Again, leaving a bit of a stub. So this branch I mentioned, this branch, it comes, if you look at the front view, it doesn't come, it's not an eye poker branch, but it does come, out towards the viewer. So if I can encourage it to grow a little more off this side, so all these branches aren't crossing the trunk line, I think it would look better. So on this branch I have a couple of options. I've got 2 branches growing opposite back here. I could prune the tip off if I wanted to shorten it. There's a lot of possibilities. I have a downward facing bud here. On a coniferous tree, you generally want your lower branches drooping. As you go up the tree, they become more horizontal, and then in the apex they go vertical. So I could prune that branch back quite hard to that downward facing bud. And I'm trying to think if that's the best solution. It's a difficult decision. It would really shorten that branch. I think it would look too short. I'm going to prune off the branch on the inside here, keeping the outward facing one on the other side. Those were bar branches. Keeping this one. There's a branch growing up top here. It's kind of an unusual location for a larch. They do grow quite chaotically at the tips. They grow kind of every direction. So it's not out of character of a larch, but do I want a branch growing up here? I'm not so sure. I'll prune the tip off it for now and keep it just in case, someday in the future I want to shorten this branch to this one. I've got part of this branch that kind of crosses the trunk line here, so I think I'll prune it back further to here, like that, and then I'll prune the tip off this one here, like that. So it's not quite so much an eye poker branch now. It kind of goes off to the right hand side. I think that looks better. Just clear these needles out of here. Now the lowest branch out the back, it's a good looking branch. Certainly nothing wrong with it. I am going to prune it back, and it's getting a little long. So if you see my conical shape, I don't want it, too wide a conical shape. So I'm going to prune it back. So I'll prune this one back to here. I'll prune this part back to a downward facing bud right here. There's a bud on the bottom. There's a bud on the bottom here, but that's getting kind of long and straight, so I'm going to go right back to this pair of buds back here. This one I got a downward bud here, so I'll prune just in front of that. There's a few hairs on here I gotta get rid of. There's part of this branch grows downwards and I don't see any buds up higher, so I'm just going to remove it entirely. I think it's just pointing too far downwards. This branch is getting long. I've got some buds here, so I'll prune it off here. And then I've got this branch divides into two here, and then there's this part of it kind of goes 90 degrees to the branch. It's not very flowing, and I think this is the better branch to develop, so I'm going to take that one right off. Like that, keeping the branch a little tighter so it's not so spreading. So I think that's got that branch pruned up. The structure of it looks good. It's brought back a little more compact. So next, let's go up to the second branch here. So I can prune this branch back. There's one going upwards here that has a strong bud on the top. I don't see any buds down lower, so I'll have to leave that, or I could prune it right away, or prune it right off, but I'll leave it. I'll prune the tip off here. And I think that's about all I can do on that branch. I could shorten it way back. But I only have the one branch going out the back here. Well, I've got this one, I guess. I could take it off there. Makes a pretty short branch for my conical shape, and I don't think I have much branching in closer to the trunk line and the branches above, so I think it wouldn't work. I think I need a wider conical shape and then, rely on back buds in here to eventually shorten the entire conical shape, make it more compact. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think that's okay. The next branch up, well, I pruned that one already, so we can go to the one out the back here. I can prune the tip off here, the tip off here, here, here. There's some buds in here. I can prune this back. And then I'm looking at the structure of the branch. I've got kind of two parallel branches here. So I think I want to shorten this one. So I'll go to here. This one can be shortened back to here. I think that's good on that branch. Going up, my next branch is this one back here. Now it's not an opposite branch to this one, but it's pretty close to the same area, and it grows in across the smaller tree behind it. So I'm just trying to picture what it would look like removed. It would look fine removed, or I have the option of shortening it to this branch in here. It's quite a thick branch. I think total removal is in order for that branch. It'll leave kind of a space here, but then it's filled in by the second tree. Yeah, I'm going to take it right off. So here I go. I'll leave a bit of a stump, and I'll clean this stump up because it's so thick. So off this branch goes, like that. And I'll clean that stub up now. It's a little long. Make it fairly flush. It's on the trunk, so it should heal quite quickly. as the tree grows, it'll callus over that quite fast. So I think that's good. So that branch is totally gone now, and I don't miss it. It looks quite fine without it. The other branch, this one's starting to kind of grow over top of the second tree. And again, I do kind of have close to bar branches here. They're staggered slightly, but not a whole lot. I'll definitely shorten that branch. I've got like some buds way back here. I've got some branches out further. I don't think this back one's alive. This one looks like it's died already. Let me just check. Yeah. So that one's gone anyway. Well, I'll certainly shorten it back to this one. So here I go. So that comes off. That helps. Once these buds develop, this lower one, I could even prune it back further. But I don't want to do that yet until these buds extend or these shoots extend. I think that would be too risky. This branch out front here, well, there's a big long shoot growing over top of the second tree here. I'm going to take that off. It's quite long, this branch. It doesn't keep in my conical shape. I do have a bud on the bottom here, which is nice. I'll at least prune the tip off here, so it still divides from 1 to 2 here. And then there's a branch that kind of crosses the trunk line here. I think I'm going to take that one off. It doesn't look very good. It doesn't flow nicely. So that's gone. And I think that's all I'll do on that branch for now. I could remove this one here. I think I will. Kind of cross the trunk line. Yeah, so that branch is still a little long, but once these buds develop down here, I can shorten it in future. Now I have another branch. I said these are almost bar branches here. And these two are ladder branches. You can see they're directly above each other. So I'm thinking of maybe taking that back one off. It's a nice branch. It's just, growing directly above the one below it. I don't think I'd want to take the lower one off. I think the tree would look too bare on the bottom. And if I kept this one, I'd definitely have to prune this one off. And again, I think it would look too empty in this space. I think it would look like a two-dimensional tree. So I'm going to take this one off. So here I go. I'll also prune that one back to the trunk line because it'll repair very quickly on the trunk line here. Like that. So hopefully the tree looks okay still. I think it does. Now going up to this branch next, I think I need to prune the end off. It's getting too long, so I'll prune this part back to there. And I think everything else on that branch looks okay. There's a stub here I could remove from the last time it was pruned. Yeah, I think everything else is okay on that branch. There is a nice bud out the back here. Maybe once that extends, I can shorten the branch further in the future. So I'll keep that option open. Now there's a branch here. and it comes out and it kind of grows back. It's almost like a windswept branch. It looks okay. I don't mind, in the upper part branches crossing the main trunk line. I've got to decide, do I want that look? I don't think so. I think in this case, all the other branches, none of them look kind of windswept. So I'm going to prune that part of it away. So here I go. That's gone. I just kind of want these to be calm, peaceful trees. No drama. There's a stub here I can remove. This one's getting a little vertical. There's a couple of buds here, so I'll just take the tip off. And same here. I think that's got that branch pruned up. I could take it back. I think I will a bit to here, just to keep it a little more compact. Then going up, I've kind of got, again, these two branches are fairly close to each other. I don't think I'd want to prune it away, otherwise the top of the tree would look kind of sparse. And I don't want to grow this branch over top of this second tree. So I do have a bud in here, so I can take this branch back to there. I can prune this vertical part off. I've got some buds divisions down here, so I'll take this part off, clean up that stub like that. I think that's got that branch pruned up. And then I'm going up. This branch is okay. I could prune it back. There's a bud down here, so I will, and there's one on top, just so it's not growing over top of this other branch. So I'll prune that one back. And then this branch up here is getting quite thick and vigorous, so I've got to reduce the vigor in this branch. So harder pruning up top, lighter pruning at the bottom of the tree. So, I've got kind of a vertical part I can prune away here. Like that. I filled the card on the camera. I was pruning away the top of the tree, and I didn't realize the camera had stopped. So this is the main tree all pruned up. I did some severe cuts at the top here, trying to get that compact conical shape to the tree. So now I'm going to prune up the smaller tree. So here I go. So I've got a branch kind of coming out in this spot, which I think is okay because I don't have any branches on the main tree here. I'll have to keep them fairly compact, which I can do. I've got a good bud growing from the bottom of the branch here that I can prune back to once that extends. I can shorten this one a bit, like that. There's one growing out the bottom, which I think is okay. I'll leave that. It's a small branch, but it'll develop in the future. I'll take the tip off this one. I will take the tip off this branch also. And this one right back to here. Because it's vertical, I want it quite short. I've got a branch drooping down here, and I've got a couple of buds going horizontal. So I think I don't need the top part of this branch, so I'll prune that away. Keeping my kind of cascading part. Just take the tip off there. This branch, this part of it kind of crosses the trunk line, so I think I'm just going to keep the part out here. So I'll prune this part away like that. This is the radial direction of the branch. I don't want it spreading out too far. There's a branch back here I can shorten. We'll just take the tip off. I'll take the tip off this one. Pruning to a downward facing bud. Same with this one. Here too. And here. Bring it a little more compact. I don't see any growth on these, but well, they are turning green, so I guess they're alive. I think that's okay to develop. I'll take this one back. Take the tip off it at least. Now I've got a branch here that's a bit of an eye poker branch, and it's in the apex, which is okay, but it's quite long if you look at it from the side view. It's long and vigorous, so it needs to be pruned back. And I do have a bud on the bottom here, so I could take the whole top off, and I will. So this branch will get cut back severely. And then I've got a branch at the back here. I'll prune it back shorter to here. On this branch, it's a little long and it's kind of growing over top of this section. I'll prune this part off. And I'm going to reduce this branch back to here. And then take the tip off. It kind of gets that branch a little more compact. It's not the most flowing branch in the world, but it's okay. Take that back. I can take the tip off here. So here I've got a branch that's drooping and one that's going up. I think I'll take my upward part off, keeping my sort of cascading branch. I can take the tip off this branch. There's a big stub here I can take back. I think this one needs to be a bit more compact. Maybe this one too. I'm going to take this tip off. Reduce this one back even further. This one's a bit awkward. I'll cut it back for it further. I've got a stub here I can remove. There's a branch growing at the base of this one, but I'll leave it because I may use this branch and prune this one off in the future. Now, the only thing that kind of bothers me is this one kind of crosses a trunk line, so I'm going to take it off like that. And this one kind of bothers me too. I'll leave it for now. I'll reduce it back. See what happens in that area. So I think that's got the second tree pruned up. I think it's looking quite nice. I think the overall composition's looking good too. I think they look in harmony with each other. Yeah, so that is it for the pruning and repotting of Zin's 2 larch trees. And I hope they have a good summer of growing this year. So I'll give you a 360 of the 2 trees now. All right, here I go, rotating the tree around. So here's the front, coming around to the right-hand side, coming around to the back, to the left-hand side, and back to the front. Here is a look at what I pruned off the larch trees today. So quite a pile of branches, and some of them, quite thick. Another day is coming to an end, the sun is setting, and it's one more day closer to spring. My two little larch trees certainly made some steps ahead today, going from that plastic training pot planted in a Y shape to something that looks quite nice, and I'm looking forward to developing them into the far future. So that is all for today for part 2 of this series. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.